Welcome to our new podcast series called In the Mix. I am Wynn Darden. I'm the business manager for the Lumiflon FEVE fluoropolymer resins. The podcasts are all about choosing the right coating solutions, where we discuss with industry experts what influences their decision-making processes when it comes to specifying and using coatings. We'll delve into how experts develop their strategic planning approach to current structural and future market demands. In this episode, we'll talk with Henn of Henn Murals. Eric is a world-renowned muralist with more than 30 years of experience creating realistic, large-scale mirrors around the world. He's painted structures like buildings and storage tanks from New York to LA and as far away as Australia. Eric brings to life murals measuring up to 100,000 square feet, painting while suspended 200 feet in the air. His work is not only visually stunning, but it also imparts a sense of community and connection to the places where his murals are located. AGC is honored that Eric has chosen Lumiflon-based coatings for some of his work. Eric, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Eric, why don't you give us a brief bio and how you got your start as a muralist?
My start basically was on a small motorcycle tank. I started painting motorcycles in Virginia Beach, and that's where my career started. And I ended up painting quite a few motorcycles for the Hells Angels, and I did surfboards and t-shirt designs, and that was the beginning of my career, and it expanded to large scale water towers and petroleum tanks. So yeah, it went from small to extremely colossal.
Wow. Okay. Um, what's your training and background as an artist?
I am blessed. I from an early age of having an ability, I basically could always draw or sculpt or whatever. But I never thought I could make a living at it. And I ended up getting a football scholarship, and I went to school in West Virginia for 2 years. I didn't necessarily take art classes, but I basically went for 2 years, moved to Virginia Beach, and did construction. And then I'm pretty self taught when it comes to all of the big murals, water towers. It's just kind of like an inner skill that I had that didn't think I could make a living at.
Wow, that's really great. I have envy for you. I can't even draw water, so I'm envious of you
Well, I still write
there.
sloppy, but I can look at a picture and do
Yeah,
creative.
yeah,
So
that's a real that is an innate talent, isn't it? Let's talk about water tanks specifically. A lot of muralists, of course, are using large block walls as their canvas. You seem to have gone into water tanks and petroleum tanks and industrial structures. How'd you get onto this aspect of art?
so it was a lucky break, and most people wouldn't have thought it was a break, but I did, and it was So I've been doing murals for roughly 36 years, and 30 years ago, I got approached by Citgo Petroleum in Corpus Christi, Texas, and they seen some work I did in a mall down in that area when I was traveling. I was still living in Virginia Beach, and they wanted 100-foot square logo. And somehow I talked them into doing the whole circumference of this big fire water storage tank in the middle of a refinery, which was 17,000 square feet. Never done anything that large. I did my quick research and went in there and got it done.
I'll be darned.
So,
So,
yeah, and that was my first tank, and from there it got so much positive media that the CEO of the petroleum company asked if I'd be interested in doing 10 more. And Sure you could guess my answer. And that's how my career started with tanks. And then it evolved into water towers
Hmm.
and, high aerial work. But that's basically how I got my start.
Wow, that's that's different, isn't it? Um, Tell us about your process. How do you design the murals, and how do you apply them, and where do you get your ideas from for designs?
So, um, it's 50-50 because sometimes I have the client providing me with what they want,
Hmm.
and I will show a reference to show a rendering from before and then the end, result, so they have confidence. Because a lot of times people they get nervous when they don't really know the process
Hmm.
because I'm the only one up there knowing if I'm making a mistake or not. Nobody else kind of knows what's going on, and it's a hard process for like the inspectors and people that want to know if things are being applied right, and I take pride in that. And I am coined as an artist, or really, I'm coined when I go somewhere is the logo painter. Um, but what people don't know about me is I am all about longevity.
Hmm.
I have tanks that are going on 30 years
Yeah.
with paint jobs that had no clear coat, and they're still good.
Wow.
Um, there's techniques besides the actual material that you're applying,
Hmm.
and I pretty much I push I push it to the limit with some of that with temperatures and stuff.
Hmm.
But I've done all types of tests throughout my career to make sure that there's no failure, and I don't have any failures on tanks. And
Hmm.
that's my biggest
Well, that's
uh, pet peeve. I will produce your work, but I'm also going to make sure that it's long lasting and it
right.
doesn't fail. So,
Okay.
and I know a thing or two about the coding and about how it works and about the erosion and the
Hmm.
sun and all that. So I always take that in consideration when I design
Okay.
and colors and stuff like that.
Right. Right. Now, do you do all the actual painting yourself? Do you have contractors that you work with, or how does that come about?
No, I do all my own base coding, except if the client wants to, do it prior to my arrival.
Hmm.
Um, and I normally do it. Um, for instance, I did a 21 million gallon tank in Nashville, and I did all of the paint, and it was with two coats. It was 190,000 square foot. Um, so I'm not new to rolling a lot of paint
Hmm.
and applying a lot of paint.
Yeah.
So yeah, I in the early years I did all my own prep work and base coating, and I still do today. But there's a lot of tank builders that will give a finish coat, and then the mural or the logo will be applied after that, which I'm fine with.
Okay.
So both.
Okay. Are you applying kind of typical industrial type base coats for your murals?
Yeah, I mean, I've used probably throughout the years every product out there and every type of lift out there. Um, but I'm a big fan with Tanemic's 700 series.
Yep.
Just from being out in the field and using this product, it's to me the top in the market.
Mm-hmm.
And I if it was up to me, I'd work exclusive with that product and not really. Sometimes, I'm not the one specking out the
Right.
project. But in the past years, past 10 years, I have noticed that about 95% of these towers are being, you know, painted with hydroflon, and that's a good thing because it is long lasting, and the colors hold. And hydroflon 700 series versus any
Hmm.
acrylic is, when I have to use an acrylic, I'm doing multiple base coats just to get a foundation, then do the artwork on top. With hydroflon, it is so rich in coverage that I do not have to do multiple base coats. I can paint and blend my colors and get the adequate mills that I need, and the color saturation is beyond any dulled down acrylic. So, besides all that, your end result is a high gloss, which gives you that gloss retention, which does fight from sun erosion. So, it's just like when I'm painting something and I never want to paint it again, I feel very confident with this paint because I know it's going to last. And it's if it's done in the right conditions, there's no failure, and it does hold up way longer than water-based coatings. So that's just from field experience. And one thing I'd like to add about the hydroflon is I have pushed it to the limits with extreme temperatures, and I made this discussion with Tanemic, and they're not, they're not backing me or anything, but I have did experiments, and I've actually done paintings and murals in temperatures that are not really um they're kind of frowned upon, but what I've learned through doing this um is it's not the temperature, has nothing to do with it. It's just the moisture, and it's the humidity and dew point. That is the only thing that will affect it, not cold temperatures. If you have a cold, dry temperature, as long as that humidity is correct, you're not going to have failure. You're going to have high gloss. And I've tested that, and actually, I've done some murals like that. But
Boy, that's great. Can you give us some examples of key projects? Of course, we see the ones that are done with Tanemic, and we've seen things like the Destin tank, the Dum Dum tank, and Haribo tank. What others have you done with the Hydroflon?
my most recent is in Grand Prairie,
Mm-hmm.
Texas, in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and it's a landmark tank, new construction. It's a hydro column, um, and it has some very detailed murals. It has three different scenes
Wow.
on it. Um, it's got a horse race scene. It's got a night scene from the epic Central, which is a water park in the area, and then it's got a sunset with a lake that's well known in the area. But it's three separate things, and you can see it. You can see the whole thing from the interstate. It's right on the interstate. It's a great location, but that was a really challenging project because of weather.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I experienced um, everything from tornadoes to flooding to hail to snow to, I mean, it was everything. High winds. It was the best thing I experienced was the eclipse, and
Oh, nice.
so it was during that. But
Uh-huh.
this project was supposed to be a 3 month project, and it ended up being a 6.5 month project. And what it all comes down to is conditions,
Yeah.
and all of us painters that use this type of paint, that's all we talk about. We check the weather, we check the humidity and the dew point every morning,
Mm-hmm.
and we look at where it's going to go. And when those conditions get right is when I can start mixing paint. And I have in the past said, "Oh, come on, this is not true." And I do a test patch, and sure enough, it would flash. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, somebody knows something about this. So you have to, take that in consideration with all those type of jobs. And sometimes you don't get conditions when you get fogs and stuff until noon or 1 o'clock,
Mhm.
and then sometimes you have to cut off at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and it's hard to get things done.
Mhm.
And with me, um, I've been privileged enough to be able to mix my own colors on site. I can make any color within
Mhm.
minutes. So when I'm doing these murals, I'm using hundreds of colors, like three or four
Right.
hundreds of different colors with the
Mhm.
product. So what I do is get big batches. I make my tones. I look at what image I'm doing, and I'll pre-make all these colors. But what I learned is I will make a small batch, add the hardener in, and then you're limited for so many hours
Mhm.
until it sets up. So that's how I figured out how to do these murals. I have all my colors. I
Mhm.
know what colors to grab. Sometimes I'm up there painting with 7 colors at the same time, blending them, uh, brushing. It's just the key is to, and I've tried to teach people and just let them know, and I'm open to tell anyone that wants to try this. It's all about timing with the
Mhm.
hardener and everything. So
You do have a limited pot life on these things you have to watch
yeah,
out for, yeah.
and that's a good thing too. But
Mhm.
what I also have figured out is, besides the ratios, is I can figure out like how much to mix up and how many hours that I'm going to be using this,
Right.
so there's no waste because it's a lot of money. Like if you knock over 2 cans, that's $800.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
and I'm not trying to spend other people's money with mistakes. So
That's right. Yeah, you gotta be really careful about all that.
yeah,
How many of these tanks would you do in a year?
I've done as many as 11 in 1 year, and that's including logos. And I do for a lot of these petroleum companies, and it's pretty fun. Um, I do a lot of logos for them besides murals.
Mhm.
So I am a logo painter too. Um, but yeah, it varies from 6 to 11 to maybe more. I can tell you this: in the past 3 years, I've been on the road for 309 days at average for the past 3 years, and pretty much on the road, my entire career. Um, So it's a lot of time, and I'm trying to slow down a little and do more high profile, more scenic type um, projects. And a lot of people don't know is I have painted 3 aquariums, like dozens of murals in aquariums, zoos, theme parks. Um, Out in California, did theme parks, but with new roller coasters opening up and stuff, and I'm pretty sure they use that on some of the roller coasters, even the steel ones. But I did backdrop murals for that, and so besides just towers and petroleum tanks, I've painted on every surface you can imagine. So even corrugated asphalt tanks that are 180 degrees with the temp. Like, it's crazy that the different things I've painted on, besides towers. So just to add that, it's kind of, and it helps with being well rounded with adhesion and experiencing a brick surface versus concrete versus steel. and anything else you can think of. Aluminum, you have to do etching. So there's a lot of, in the industrial type settings, there's just so many different surfaces, and it all comes down to the right prep work too.
Tell us about it. You mentioned that in Grand Prairie you're up there during storms and everything. Give us a couple of stories about applying some of the coatings. It must be unusual to be sitting up there a few hundred feet in the air and the wind picks up, I guess.
Yeah, I'm up roughly for that project, 135 feet. I've been like Destin, that was a 185-foot lift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when you get winds, what people don't realize, it can be 20-mile-an-hour winds or 15 or even 5 on the ground. Every 40 feet you go up, add 10 miles per hour. So when it's saying you have 20-mile-an-hour winds that day or 25, up there it's 35 and 40-mile-an-hour gusts. And you what it does, and I tried to work in it before because of press for time
Mm-hmm.
and deadlines and everything. What it ends up doing is that wind will pick up and splatter the paint off of your roller or your brush. So everything you're painting gets splattered from the wind. Plus, you're swaying 6 feet each direction, and you're trying to, paint a straight line. No pun intended.
Yeah.
And so, I have done it before where I said, the heck with it. Uh, but you don't get much accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what's deceiving is everybody thinks, "Oh, it's rain, okay, you're not gonna paint today." And that's true. But they don't realize that the wind is a bigger factor and more often than, rain and all of that.
Right. Right.
So, it's the biggest deterrent.
Okay. And you mentioned you try to use fluoropolymers for all of the murals, but you sometimes don't get to. Is that so? The
Um, I do, and I basically follow direction too. And like if it's new construction and I'm working under the tank building company, I'm going to use what's specced out. Um, but there has been projects, and I do also I do concrete, pre-stressed concrete water tanks. The ground storage.
Yep.
So that's a whole different thing. With the resins and stuff.
Mhm.
That's a one single component, and it's breathable. It's made to have water pass,
Right.
in and out through it. Um, so I'm familiar with all different types of coatings, but as far as for steel structures, that's the best um, vehicle to use. And with me, and this is another reason I choose Tanemic is their colors are so rich in saturation,
Mhm.
and it's crushed pigment. It's like there's more solids than like a liquid tinning process, and that's what tends to fade. So it's an old sign painters, thing that yellows and reds fade quicker,
Mhm. Yep.
and that is so true. Blues, greens, browns, blacks, cold colors last longer.
Mhm.
So there's ways of getting more life out of the colors in the paint, and when you're mixing them and not getting them all what we artists call muddy colors,
Yes.
where they're like vibrant. But the reason too that I order straight vibrant, the deepest tints, is because when I mix paint, I'm not adding pigment. I'm using straight vehicle paint to each other to change my tones. And that way there's no the resin is there. There's no off chemical stuff. So it reacts correctly. It does what it's supposed to do. It performs. It has high gloss retention
Mhm.
and all that.
Okay. So you blend all of your own colors on site. That's right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have done that from day one, and that's that's also a blessing because I just see it in my mind, and I can look at a picture, I can look at clouds, and I can create that color. And there's a lot of little colors that go into it, and there's different values and tones,
Mhm.
but it's pretty for me. My oldest daughter, she does murals, and I taught her kind of the basics with colors,
Mhm.
and she's has the same little where she can make pretty much any color she wants.
Okay.
Long as you have the primaries and a couple like magentas and purples. If you have those 8 colors, you can make any color in the palette of any Fandex. So that kind of helps, and that's really key to doing pictorial scenes
Mhm.
is all the colors because it takes hundreds of
Oh
colors,
yeah, yeah, I can
and
imagine.
you don't know and you don't see it, but for instance, I'll just give a description like in Grand Prairie with the horses. There's 16 different shades of brown in each individual horse that I made, and then when I blend them, that doubles that, so that makes it 32 colors,
Wow.
and it just goes on from there. And that's just to get their skin tones,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's
Wow.
not even for the jockeys and all that. So that's where those colors just gets like crazy.
Mhm.
And what's funny is I have so many colors, and I do this kind of as a joke. I put numbers on them, but I know what the numbers mean. It's like 1 to 10, and it's from light to dark. So,
Oh, okay.
but people always are like, "Are you painting by numbers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I put my numbers." So, or I
Now,
tell people I'm colorblind, and that throws them off. So,
right.
other than that, but I put numbers, and that's basically telling me the value, how deep or dark the tone is,
Okay.
and then it goes to light. The lower the number, the
Okay.
lighter the color. The So
Right,
that's how
right.
that's just my method because I have to keep track. I have
Yeah,
hundreds
yeah.
of different colors out there, and when I mix them, I keep them in different containers where they're not in the actual paint can, unless it's a big
Mhm.
area that I'm rolling so many thousands of square feet. So it's that's that part can get confusing, but I kind of just
Right,
been doing it for so long that
right.
it's second nature.
Now, does the city, we mentioned, get back to Grand Prairie, I guess. Does the city, they come to you and they say, we want you to paint this water tank. Do they have the idea of putting horses and all that, or is that something you kind of work through them, where you might say, "What are you looking for?" type thing? How does that whole process work?
So with Grand Prairie, they already had their design, and I gave my quote, and that's how that one happened. That was a designer that they had an in-house designer or something like that. But I have done so many concepts myself, and so the process is I design it, send it to them, and they tell me if they love it. If they don't, then it goes back to the drawing board, and it's a process where everyone has to agree, and then once that is chosen, then that's my starting point, and that's how I can figure out a price and gauge how long it's going to take. And another thing that's difficult, I'll give you an example. Um, so Toledo silos, that's the largest mural in the United States. It's 170,000 square feet. I got invited on that job at the tail end after someone else got the bid. So I was the only one that's ever done silos and all of the group there. So I was the only one with experience. So I basically got the one to choose the colors and then choose the quantity of colors from all that square footage. And, I'm talking each individual color. And it's not an easy thing. Let's say 170,000 square feet and it's blue. Yeah, that's easy. But when you're doing a mural, you got to not have waste and you got to get the right color and the right colors to make stuff and mix stuff and then not have extra waste. So that project ended up taking 3,300 gallons of 1026. It was concrete silos, but yeah, it's so there's a lot more to it than just showing up and
Oh yeah,
painting.
no doubt about that. What are you working on now? You have any new projects with the
Yeah,
hydroflon?
um, well, I'm gonna be using 1028 Tademic 1028, but I am going to be um doing two logos on pre-stressed concrete tanks. In Texas, they're short jobs, but then back to back, I have an Exxon Mobil project that is two storage petroleum storage tanks that are 260-foot diameter by 64 high. It's a monster. Like, and I'm doing two of them with the same wraparound mural. So that's my next big project,
Okay.
and that's gonna take place this coming month.
Wow. Okay, and that's hydroflon, yeah.
No, it
Oh
isn't. I'm
no.
using I'm using 1028 on that,
Okay.
and but I have projects that I have used those products that are long lasting too, and there's keys to how you do it. So, but I mean, I'd love to use whatever someone can afford, but I'm basically using a different product for different situation and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and we see the same thing, of course, in our business. You get some people are they buy into the weatherability that the hydroflon and the Lumiflon based coatings can give you. But sometimes people don't want to pay the price, and the customer's right, right? So,
And another thing with the petroleum industry, and there's a lot of painting that goes on.
oh
There
yeah,
is miles and miles of piping. There are huge petroleum
yeah,
tank farms and all that and refineries. I've seen it with my own eyes. There's paint crews there that are painting for 10 years and then they start over
start
again
over
and
again. Yeah, yeah.
they yeah, and it's insane, but there's I don't know what product it is, but there's a system they use on a lot of these tanks, and it's called rundown or wash something.
Hmm.
And basically, what it is this is a chalky surface. It turns chalky.
Yeah,
You can't paint on it. You got to blast it off, but it it's not like great for rust and stuff, but it just makes the tank look white all the time. And I don't get it, but it's not long lasting. It's not sensible, but that's what's being used in a lot of these refineries and petroleum tank farms.
yeah, that's true. They tend to use inexpensive coatings, and they do a high film build, I think, on these things, and
Yeah,
a lot of what they're interested in is the reflectivity, right? They just don't want the
yeah,
tanks to absorb all the heat and everything, so a white coating.
exactly.
Yeah.
The emissions is key, and when I have to design, and I'm doing a 3/4 wrap on both these of a mural
Hmm.
on both these tanks, but I have to always use lighter colors,
Yeah.
and there's a there's a ratio of how much coverage because of the emissions and all of that.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a big play.
Yeah. It is.
It's understandable. I mean, it's for a reason.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think the target there would probably be the tanks with the logos on them that people see from the freeway and things like that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, So, well, Eric, this has been really interesting. It's been enjoyable talking to you about this. We appreciate you using Lumiflon-based coatings, the Hydroflon from Tnemec, and look forward to seeing your work in the future. I'm really fascinated by it, and keep going. It's just every time I see one of these, I can't believe the detail and the quality of the murals is just tremendous. Really enjoyable.
Well, thank you. I'm a happy camper when I'm up in the air painting with the right product, and I'll tell you, it's the way it performs. I can't really say enough. I just from all my years of field work, it is long lasting. It's really what you want to go with.
Yeah,
And
we're happy to hear that.
well, thanks. I had fun.
Thank you, Eric. Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I look forward to the finished product here.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, In the Mix. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to hear more, be sure to subscribe. To catch all the latest from Lumiflon, you can visit our website at lumiflonusa.com or follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at LumiflonUSA. Thanks again. See you next time.